This is episode number 35 of the Expert Table Tennis Podcast. My name is Ben Larcombe, and joining me on the show today is Table Tennis England performance coach Alan Cooke. Now, many of you will know Alan was a professional player. He had his senior debut back in '84, England number one, reached a career high of 27th in the world back in 1990. But today we're going to be talking more about Alan's role as a coach. Three things that I want to cover in particular is the bronze medal that England won over in Kuala Lumpur at the World Teams, one of the most fantastic results for English table tennis ever. We're going to talk a little bit more about how Alan's helping to get Team GB ready for Rio 2016, which is only a few months away. And we're also going to get some tips from Alan regarding how to prepare and peak for a big tournament. So we're going to be talking about what you need to be doing in the lead up, in the kind of preparation to get ready. We're going to be talking about some tips for what to do during the competition, and we can get some examples of what the England team were doing during the competition and what the coaching was like. And also we're going to talk about the importance of kind of feeding back after a competition and learning from your results and your performance at the tournament. So loads of stuff to get in. I'm really excited to talk to Alan and learn from all of his wisdom as both a player and a coach. I'm sure you will too. Let's get straight into the interview with Alan Cooke. Joining me on the show today is Alan Cooke. Hi, Alan.
Hi, Ben.
It's really great to have you on. How are you doing?
I'm great, thank you.
I wanted to talk to you for a while. You've been up there on my list of guests that I wanted to get on the show. And I know that a lot of listeners are going to be interested to chat to you. So thanks so much for coming on.
You're very welcome. It's nice to be at home and able to do such things anyway.
Brilliant. Now, first things first, what a brilliant performance at the World Teams. I wonder if you could kind of run us through some of the stuff that happened over there and how that felt to be there, because it was brilliant watching it on the laptop and everything, but actually being in the environment and having it all happen around you, that must have been one of the best experiences you've had as a coach.
Not only as a coach, I think even in my playing days, to experience what we experienced as a team out there surpassed anything. If I'm quite honest with you, and the strange thing about that was that we didn't see that coming. You're there, you've prepared, as you prepare for every competition, the best that you can. And it was heads down. The players were all in a fairly good place when we got there, but, the standard of competition around us, obviously, you're playing the best teams in the world. It's our first shot in the top division. So, yeah, they were prepared, they were fully focused, but I guess what happened blew us all away, really. Absolutely unbelievable, fantastic play by all of the guys out there, and the team camaraderie. I've played in a few teams myself, but I'd never experienced the tightness of that team out there, and it was just, a credit to the players and the team around them, and a joy to be involved in it.
And I guess it's the perfect build-up for Rio, which is only a few months away now. With, I guess we've got Paul and Liam qualified. I know. Can you fill us in what's going on with the team situation?
Yeah, we've had an invite in the team. It was incredibly close to getting a team in there, but it looks like we got past the post based on the results that the guys have had in the last few months. Because at one stage that wasn't on our agenda really. We were obviously trying to qualify the boys in the individual event. But it looked, before the World Championships, it looked like we were probably too far away to get the team past the line. But such incredible performances, and then to go out to the qualification event in Sweden, although the boys didn't qualify directly in that competition, the results were such that it's ended up we've qualified the team there as well, which is absolutely fantastic.
And the kind of full team will be announced soon, or when's it coming out?
It's imminent. It's imminent, the team announcement.
Okay, so we're waiting to find out about that. And kind of how big a camp is going to be going out to Rio? I assume you'll be going out with the guys, but how many other people from... I guess because it's a bit strange with it being Table Tennis England and then Team GB, isn't it? How does that work?
It is, and it's only. I mean, actually, now there are two events. There are the Olympic Games, and the one that started up last year, the European Games, are the only competitions where we actually are Team GB. Obviously, the situation at the moment is that the English players make up the bulk of that team, but in theory, players from Wales, Scotland, and Ireland can all potentially enter that team, as they did for the 2012 games in London. But yeah, it kind of potentially could be complicated, but at the moment it's, the England on the men's side, the men's team is very, very strong from England, and therefore that's making up the majority of the Team GB.
Nice. Okay, so let's have a think about. It's great watching all of the top players, and I think sometimes people can find it difficult to relate. But where I really want to go in this interview is seeing how we can learn some of the lessons from what you do with the guys and what they do themselves, and maybe try and help the listeners to kind of apply it to their own games, their own training, their own build up for tournaments. Because I mean, one thing that really stood out was obviously how prepared the three guys must have been in the lead up to going to Kuala Lumpur. Like you've spoken about kind of the camaraderie and how they were really ready to perform. I wonder if you could kind of fill us in kind of why you think that it worked so well. I know that you guys went away kind of on a bit of training before, didn't you? Did you go somewhere else as a team?
We did. And, each one of those guys that played, so talking Paul Drinkhall here, Liam Pitchford, and Sam Walker, they all had individual preparations as such. They all knew they were all needing different things. That when it got to Christmas time, they're all at slightly different stages in their preparation. So trying to get the balance between their individual needs and us working together as a team is kind of the thing that we try to do. But that's the performance team, management team sit down, talk about that alongside the players involved. And I think that planning is crucial. The ownership of the players about where they're at and being open about where they're at and what they need is probably something that we did really well. And for me, having been able to spend precious time with the boys, particularly after Christmas, I had spent time before Christmas. We'd planned what it would look like post Christmas. We had to make some changes because some were ahead of where they needed to be, or on schedule at least, and some were probably not where they quite needed to be and needed a little bit more training, etc. But working with highly motivated professionals that really want to achieve at high level is, it's a coach's dream, really. It's not always easy. There are a lot of challenges within that, but I think, in hindsight, we got the preparation just where we needed it to be. For example, just directly after Christmas, we've obviously got a situation where Liam plays in Oxenhausen alongside Sam, so they're based in the same club. Paul has obviously got a young family now living at home in London, having to play his matches abroad. So sometimes the training part for Paul has been more difficult for him to access. The daily practice is a little bit more difficult than the other guys out in Germany. So, sitting with Paul before Christmas, he made that decision. We put it to him about, what it needed to look like, his program, and he made the decision. Yeah, he needed to spend a little bit more time out there training, at a higher level. So I went along with Paul 2 weeks out in Oxenhausen. So again, we've got all three of those boys there training side by side against world-class players. The week after was the German Open, so there's 3 weeks in a row out in Germany, and then I think there was a short break whilst the guys had club matches, and then Paul went out earlier than the other two guys out to Singapore. So he was out 10 days before the World Championships, training in Asia, ready for the World Championships out in Malaysia. So I think in hindsight, the preparation, although day one wasn't our best day, the signs were good. There was no panic stations after losing to Sweden. Liam played really well in that match. The boys showed signs, but still weren't quite there. But slowly but surely, day two, all three started to look really, really good. And I think it was just great experience. Liam started the ball rolling with some great performances, and then suddenly both Paul and Sam started to hit form as well. And once all three of them were on a roll, I guess my job was just to try and keep them in that good place, performing match after match, which is not an easy thing to do, when you're playing world class opposition. But yeah, it was an absolute pleasure working with them.
Yeah, it sounds like everything just really went well. I didn't realise that you'd actually gone out with Paul to Germany as well, so you're all together. So I guess that must have had a really big impact, kind of spending so much time there as a team. Have you got similar plans for the lead up to Rio? That's kind of less than 3 months away now.
Yeah,
What's the big plan for that?
okay. Well, we have obviously. I sit down with the boys along with Simon, performance manager, and we plan ahead for each major competition, but also we've got a rough plan for the season. You know what it needs to look like. Obviously, tweaks here and there when you're on track or you're slightly behind, you get injured, etc. So we do have to make some changes, but basically that went absolutely to plan for the Malaysia situation. Our plan from here is in a couple of weeks we will go out to Korea, have about a week or 10 days training before playing the Korean Open. Then they come back, have a couple of days, 2 or 3 days rest, do some physical training and prep back home. And then we're out to Denmark for a week, training there with a number of different international teams. The week after, we're out in Germany, training with a German national team and some other, again, Samsonov and a few other players will be involved in that training camp. And then we're at home for another week before flying out to Brazil. And we're going. I think we're going fairly early so we can acclimatise and make sure everything's ready when we get there. So yeah, all the plans are there. Hopefully, we won't need to change any of them if they all stay fit and healthy, and everybody's happy with that plan.
Great. And one of the things you've mentioned is, I guess, talking about kind of periodization. You talk about people being at different stages and maybe they're kind of slightly ahead or behind of where they need to be at. I wonder if you could kind of explain that to people that are listening, what you're kind of doing. Are you kind of changing the training as you get closer to an event?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, the guys, let's say in a normal situation, you'd do a bulk of your fitness in the summer, the off season, so your fitness levels are where they need to be when you start practicing. Then you start the practice. The practices will, at the start of the season, look different to when you get close to competition. You maybe start playing, lots of long open rallies when you start back, getting your touch, your feeling, your movement, etc., consistency in your game. Then when you start getting towards the competition time, there's a lot more serve and receive type exercises. The training, you're tweaking, you're doing more of the sprints and the short shuttles and stuff like that. So yeah, and you go through that process. The difficulty for the guys now, there's a number of challenges to that. The number of important competitions that they have to play in and league matches, which are paying their bills. So they have to perform on a weekly basis. So it's certainly different to when I played, in the sense that we had one major competition at the end of the season where I knew I had to be in sort of top shape for. Now the number of major competitions are significantly more. Plus, obviously, like I just said, the club matches, there's a pressure to perform in the club matches as well. So you're trying to perform well in every single game, but I guess we still have to sit down and at the start of the season and say, look, this is the business end of the season. This is when you've got to be in peak shape. So when we look at a season this year, for example, we knew that February was incredibly important because that was the Malaysia World Championships. But we also knew, we wanted to make sure at that stage we're ready for the Rio Games. So yeah, and that planning is crucial. You don't leave it until 2 or 3 weeks before. That planning is done way in advance. But at the same time, if someone gets injured and those plans have to change, you have to adapt, and that's an ongoing process that we have to manage, and the players have to manage.
Yeah, definitely. And now I'm thinking, what do you do when it comes to kind of goal setting for these events? Like, because I remember hearing that I think for the world teams, there was a bit of a goal to kind of just stay up and make sure that you didn't get relegated or whatever. And obviously you kind of achieved way past that. How do you set goals? What are the goals that are being set for Rio, kind of with the players and as a team?
Well, we generally will sit down and discuss, where we are in the whole situation. And like you said, for Malaysia, for example, 2 years ago, we managed to win the second division and get promotion, which was a fantastic achievement at that stage, a young team breaking through. So, this time when we got there, the goal was if we reach the top 16, you are guaranteed then in 2 years' time to stay in that top category. So that was our underlying goal, to try to make sure we could do that. Not an easy thing to do when you looked at our group and we had Germany, Sweden, France, etc. We had to finish inside one of those teams to guarantee that. But at the same time, what we didn't do was put a ceiling on what the performance could achieve. So, and I think that was really important. So once they started to play really, really well, we're not thinking about those goals anymore. They were literally just thinking about how they're going to perform in this next point. And it really is for the top players that's where they need to be. They're not getting ahead of themselves. They're not worrying about what they didn't do or did do in the past. They're literally just in the moment trying to enjoy, what they've got to do in the next ball. And that was the beauty out in Malaysia. All the boys were just out there enjoying what they're good at, and that was playing table tennis and just staying in the moment, trying to win that next point. So yeah, goal setting is an important part of achieving any level. But at the same time, once you've set your goals out, it's not something you're then worrying about. You're working on what you're doing here in the here and now.
Okay, so you're talking about the importance of kind of when you're at the tournament being able to really just focus on what's happening now. How as a coach are you able to kind of create that environment? What are the kind of things that you're saying to players kind of on the day in the tournament hall? Kind of you must kind of like be constantly talking to each other. What are the kind of things that you're saying?
Do you know what? I think it can vary a lot. I think it really depends where they are at any given time. And for example, that was a new experience for me and for the players at the World Championships. One, because we've never been in that situation, and two, they were achieving stuff that they probably surprised themselves at. And like I said to you earlier, I think the key for me at that stage wasn't to put any questions or doubts in their head. It was just to keep them enjoying the challenges that lie ahead, really. So we didn't overthink it, and I think that was really important. We weren't looking for things that weren't there. We just, we need to, let's make our preparation. Let's make sure we're nice and fresh. We do the preparation that we need. Often you've got to be careful in long competitions that you don't over practice. Although we were only playing one match a day, and physically that wasn't difficult for the boys. It's the mental side that can tire you out. So just getting those sort of things right and talking about that. How's the preparation going to look? Do we need a long practice? Do we need a short practice? Do we need to bring some left-handed players in for the sparring because we're playing so and so and they've got lefty. So it was fairly simple, the conversation, really. Occasionally, if a player's not playing where they need, you'll speak to them. Is there anything? Shall we try this? Shall we try that? But in that situation, actually, all the guys started to play well at the right moment. When they didn't have a good game, they were still in a good place. So we didn't search for things that we didn't need to search for, if that makes sense. So it was just literally trying to keep them in a really positive frame of mind.
Yeah, that sounds like definitely the way to go, and just rolling with it a bit more. I wonder if we could talk a bit more about you as a coach, Alan. I know that throughout the competition, I kept hearing the commentators pointing out like kind of how calm you were, how you were able to kind of like have like this calming influence on the team. And when you go to tournaments, you see kind of some coaches go for the kind of like relaxed approach, and others are kind of really they live every moment with the team. They're kind of cheering and shouting, or they look kind of like absolutely destroyed in the corner. I was wondering if when you're coaching at these big tournaments, is that just part of your personality, or are you kind of deliberately taking that kind of calm, relaxed approach? Like, how did that come about?
I think sometimes you are conscious of that. If I'm working with young players, I'm conscious about trying to stay calm, because they need to, they need to be calm at the table. So if a coach is going crazy, then it's hard to expect the player to understand. I need to think my way out of this. I've got to think about how to solve this issue here and now. Where I didn't feel I was that. I don't think I looked that calm once we started getting to the quarterfinal or even the Poland match once we started getting to the knockout stages. I found myself sort of jumping up out my chair, and I could feel my heart racing at times and so on. So I probably wasn't anywhere near as calm as what the commentator was saying at that stage. But I think when I'm working with young players, I'm consciously trying to stay calm, because you're trying to give them the right sort of vibes about where they need to be. They need to be thinking their way, not just trying to bludgeon their way out of a problem. They've got to be smart. If to be a good table tennis player, you've got to be smart. And the adrenaline's flowing. You're playing a lot of tight situations, and you've got to think fast. You've got to move fast. You've got to have great reactions. So you're only going to achieve those things if you're calm in your head. In an ideal world, that's where a player's at. In reality, my heart was pumping out my chest in some of those matches. In particular, I remember the one where Paul was playing the final match against France. 1 minute is 2-all, and I think he was 9-4-5 up or something, and it looked great. And then he's suddenly match point down. And the emotion that you're going through on the bench, I think it's probably a lot harder than actually when you're out there in that sense. The guys next to me, I could feel it in them. 1 minute they were really excited and pumped, and the next minute, you could feel the energy draining out of them. But that's what it's all about. I think at the table, those guys are controlling that better than what we are on the bench sometimes. But the most important thing is that those players on the bench, particularly out there when I was in Malaysia, were just giving lots and lots of positive energy to whoever it was that was at the table. And considering we only had 3 players and a coach there at the table in the matches, we had some great support in the crowd, I have to say. Although there weren't many people out there, the ones that were there were making a lot of noise, and all those things helped the players, perform at the level that they did.
Yeah. Now, I wonder if you could give us maybe some, I don't know exactly, because every situation is so different, but what are the kind of things that you're saying to the players in between matches? Because it's often difficult to actually see what's being said, but is it just kind of encouraging them? Are you being quite, are you kind of like taking notes, kind of like what's working, what's not working? How detailed do you get in those kind of like 60 seconds that you get in between the games?
I think it changes a lot, and there's no plan for that, because you're working with different characters, different personalities, and sometimes players will come off and they'll just tell me, they'll tell me exactly, I should have been doing this and I've got to do that, and then my job therefore is then to reinforce, and remember this guy, he's weak down his mid. So you're just reinforcing what they already know. They probably didn't play as well as they wanted in the previous set, but they know what they've got to do, and my job therefore is just to reinforce that. So sometimes I spend very little time talking. It's more time listening and reinforcing. There are other times when a player can come to the bench, and they've drained their confidence, or they're maybe thinking about things in themselves, and that's maybe when I can question a player. So Liam, what you thinking here, and slowly but surely, that will come out, and so there's no one way. I don't think that I coach in that sense. You try and see where a player is, because you come back in all different frames of mind depending on what's just happened out there, and then you just try to get the information to the player that you think will be helpful. Sometimes you don't need to give them much information. It's just, come on, get out there, keep fighting, stay focused, But these guys that I'm working with, when we're talking about, the guys at the World Championships, they pretty much know what they should be doing when they're out there anyway. So, it's different to working with young players, where you're probably giving them different bits of advice.
Okay, so perhaps if you're in the corner coaching a young player and you can actually see something that they're doing wrong, or they should try something else and it might have a big effect, you're maybe being a bit more tactical. Whereas when it comes to these older guys, you're more just kind of having a conversation with them.
It can be, and for a young player, for example, it might be that the goal is not just about winning this match. It might be that you're trying to encourage a style of play that's gonna get better and better and better for them to become, the player that they want to become. So it could be something where you are telling them you've got to stay close, whether you like it or not. That because you're trying to encourage that to be in their game longer term, because that's how they're going to develop the game stronger and become a better player. So yeah, working with a young player, I think is slightly different when you're cornering often than working at a world championships where you're literally trying to get the best out of the player here and now. That's what it's all about.
Okay, one more question about kind of corner coaching that I'm interested in finding your kind of take on. Let's say you're coaching a fairly young player and they're up against a player that, obviously never say never, but both of you, player and coach, are pretty confident that they haven't really got a chance of winning. Like whoever they're playing is just a completely different level. What kind of things would you say to them before and kind of during the match so that they kind of get the most out of it? Do you kind of set different goals? Is it good to kind of like say kind of, come on, you can beat them even if you kind of know that it's not going to happen? What do you think about that?
I think in that situation it's probably, I think, there has to be you have to be realistic in where you are in the whole thing. But it's, a goal might not be necessarily, of course we all want to win the next match. We want to win every match that we play, and that's a characteristic of a winner. They hate losing, they want to win. But sometimes you have to understand where you are in the big picture, and if you're playing someone that's the world junior champion and you're number 4 in England or whatever, reality tells you that you're probably still a long way off this player. So, again, it would be about some goals. What are you going to try and do here? How are you going to try and play? Whether it's, I'm not going to let him push me off the table, or I'm going to try and get my forehand in as much as I can into. So I think you talk about the processes of goals, the process goals that you're going to try and achieve when you're out there, and keep the focus on that as opposed to the outcome of the match. That would be where I would work with a young player in that sort of situation, I think.
Okay, yeah, makes perfect sense. Right, so let's think now about kind of what's happening after a big event. I know that after Kuala Lumpur, you were trying to kind of get the team together for some kind of debrief. Now, this is definitely something that the majority of non-elite players don't do. Definitely not in kind of a formal sense. They might play a tournament, it goes well, it goes bad. Like they might kind of on the drive home think, have a little think about it, but they're not really using what happened at the tournament and then kind of putting it into their training or kind of coming up with plans. I wonder if you could go through kind of what happened after the world teams and kind of the discussions that you had and how that affected the lead up to Rio.
Okay, I mean, debriefing is something that we often try to do with players. It's not always possible. You said it there, after Malaysia, it was really difficult. The guys obviously had a long build-up. They had a long competition, went out and celebrated, quite rightly, after achieving what they had, and then straight back to the clubs. So the opportunity to take a debrief there directly after the competition was literally impossible. Normally, you do get an opportunity to spend a little bit of time with either the team or the individuals that you're working with to just take their assessment of what happened. Maybe look planning forward. Is there anything we learn about that we need to now be working on for this next section of work? So that's an ongoing thing. The debriefs. In reality, it's not always possible to do them as thoroughly as you probably would like. But for us, I think working with professional players, we do try to do that where possible. So and again, the players generally are quite clear on what's happened. Once they've come away from the competition and they're calm, and they've reflected, and possibly some watch the matches, some don't want to watch the matches when they come back. That will be left sometimes to the coach to do or whatever. Again, that's an individual thing. But I think reality is, after a period of time, on reflection, they know how they perform, they know what works, they start to understand what they need to improve. So I think even for young players, that sort of process on a small basis is quite a healthy thing to do. And being able to watch footage of yourself. I was never good at doing that when I lost. I always wanted to watch if I won. I never wanted to watch if I lost. But I remember Waldner saying once, when he was asked, or his brother was asked, why was he such a great player? He said because he understood what losing was about, and I guess that you learn more from when you lose matches if you dare look back and watch the footage or whatever, or you've understood how you lost, then that makes absolute sense. But so it's not easy to always take the debriefs in the manner that you want them, but more often than not, we will sit directly after the competition and look at what went well, what needs to improve. And if we can't do that, we'll take that debrief further down the line. And in fact, actually, only this week, I probably had a thorough chat with Liam, for example, about the World Championships and where he is now and what this next bit of work is going to look like in his build up to Rio. So that's simply the way it is. They're living abroad, they're playing for foreign clubs. So yes, I speak to the guys on a very regular basis, but sometimes face to face for things like that is a far better way of doing things.
And are you using quite a lot of video? I'm sure that you're kind of filming matches. Do you do a lot of analysis, watching that back, maybe even kind of scouting other players?
No, I again, the players are all very individual with that. Sometimes they want to watch a bit of footage before a game on a player. Sometimes they'll just let me do that. I will always watch it because I want to learn, try and see if I've got some information that I can give of the opponent. Often you know it, but I try and look at recent footage of a player on YouTube. Really easy to do. So you just, as long as you've got an internet connection, you can look at who their opponents are. And again, I'll ask Paul if he wants to look at it. He, for example, sometimes will, sometimes no. I'm okay. I'll concentrate on myself, and that's absolutely fine with me, really. So yeah, that's that again, a very individual thing. I think for young players, they probably should look at a little bit more footage and try and learn visually and see what opponents or any player is good or weak at. Because I think I learned a lot from watching, not just on table, but learning about opponents, what they were good at, and that's when I would get the inspiration to go on table myself and try new things. So yeah, it's something I would encourage for young players to try and watch as much of good players play as they can.
And then let's think about after Rio, kind of, there's going to be a little bit of a gap before they all go back to kind of playing in their club stuff. Not that long. Is that going to be a time where they kind of have a rest and have a relax? What I know you mentioned before, kind of the idea of kind of pre-season doing lots of kind of your harder physical fitness training. How do you see that kind of fitting in for the team?
Yeah, each player will have their own, obviously, different schedules. Basically, the Bundesliga is the tough one because they generally start back very, very early. So players playing in the Bundesliga, Sam, for example, would find he's going to have a lot less time in that situation. If he's playing competitions in the summer, he's literally going to be having to go back to his club directly and probably start competitions straight away. Whereas if some of the leagues, Swedish league, will probably push their season back a little bit more. So in an ideal world, players probably after a major competition like that, well, not probably, definitely need to take a short break, even though something like the games physically is probably less demanding than a World Championships because you're only playing one team match per day or one individual match per day. So physically, it's not particularly demanding, but it's the psychological tiredness that in the preparation, for months and months you've been thinking about it and building up and training and preparing for it. So yes, after a major competition and a long season, I don't know of any player that probably shouldn't need a break. That most players will need a break. It's just how long it's going to take them to sort of turn it around. And again, you would ordinarily after that you'd start doing the physical preparation prior to the practice. But in reality, everybody's got tough schedules that they've got to turn around quickly. So you've just got to do what's right for you in your situation. And all of our boys have a slightly different situation because they're all playing in different foreign leagues.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, so they've got loads going on. Now, I guess, final question. One thing that I've just been thinking about just then is looking forward over the next couple of years. I'm sure that Paul and Liam, very different kind of personal situations, but I'm sure that they're both going to be pushing on, trying to improve their ranking and really get as high as possible. What kind of things do you think at present is kind of holding them back from being a top 20 player or a top 10 player? What kind of areas of their game are you looking at and saying, if you want to take that next step, like this needs to be better? Or is it just kind of a combination of kind of lots of little things coming together? Are they kind of like working on big things or is there not anything specific?
It's probably a question better aimed directly at the two boys, but both those players have shown in the last 12, 18 months that on any given day when they're hitting their best form, they are very capable of beating players, inside that top 20, top 10 of the world. Both of them have done that already. So there is absolutely no reason why they can't feature inside the top 20 of the world, for example. But that said, every little step, when you start reaching the top 100 or the top 50 of the world, to make top 40, to make top 30, for example, it is the small details. I think both players have got different things that they probably need to work on. But I think the difference between the best players in the world and the rest is the majority of it is not technical. It's more about the psychological aspect of it, and being mentally tough and being consistent at that level. And I think that's where we need to be. We just need to be a little bit more consistent at playing up there. And maybe that's the self-belief. Maybe now that can be a stepping stone. I know the boys grew immensely out there in Malaysia in confidence, and hopefully they'll take that forward. When I ask them now where they are with it, I absolutely buy into the fact that they believe they can beat most teams in the world on any given day. So I'm sure they've matured and grown a lot because of that experience in Malaysia. And the psychological aspect, I think, is the key for stepping in when you start talking about going in the top 20 of the world.
Sure. And still a very young team, so really exciting to see, in the next few years and however, what's going to happen, because it looks like everything's going in a really good direction for English table tennis.
Absolutely. I'm as surprised as anyone in many respects, but I think the Table Tennis England has done an amazing job the last 2 years in turning everything around, and the performance team. I'm really, really proud of the performance team. And hopefully that's reflected in the results that the boys are having, and not just the men's team. I think we've seen other results around the junior teams. The junior girls won in Italy recently. There are more and more good things happening and more positive vibes around. So absolutely a really exciting time for English table tennis, and hopefully some inspiration for the next generation, because the guys shown out in Malaysia, even from a small country like England, it's possible. If you perform on the day and you work incredibly hard, which those athletes have done in recent years, you can win medals in major competitions. And I'm proud to be involved with it.
Fantastic. It's been great talking to you, Alan. Thanks so much for coming on the show.
You're very welcome, Ben. Nice talking to you too.
Yeah, and we'll all be looking forward to Rio and seeing how the boys get on over there.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thanks. Cheers, Alan.
Cheers, Ben.
Bye. Thank you. Well, I really enjoyed the episode, and I hope you did too. So a huge thanks to Table Tennis England's performance coach, Alan Cooke, for joining me on this episode of the show. there's just a few things that I want to draw out from that, just to kind of help you to remember some of the really important things that I thought Alan said. The first was just the idea of how much planning and that the team kind of put into everything, and the way that they break up the season into chunks. I think that's really important, and it's something that a lot of recreational players and just kind of local league tournament players don't do. They're not so focused on looking ahead for the next season and where the big tournaments are, periodization, actually breaking things down, putting breaks in when you think you might need them. I think that's important, as opposed to just kind of taking every week as it comes and doing the same thing over and over. And those rest periods as well, so that you can actually not just get burnt out. I know that was something that Sam found during the Expert in a Year thing, where we were just trying to play as much as possible. And, you do need to give yourself little bits of rest just to recuperate, and then you can come back to hard training again. The second thing that I wanted to mention was the idea of like staying in the moment, just focusing on trying to win the next point and enjoying it while you're there. And I think that was something that was really evident if you watched England in Malaysia. They were just having so much fun, and they weren't, sometimes you can let your imagination get away with you and you're just thinking, oh, if we win this, we'll be in the final and whatever. But I think you could tell that they were just enjoying every match, supporting each other, being really positive, and that's what led to great results, not worrying about rankings or anything else, just taking each point as it comes and trying to play their best. So I thought that was great that Alan pointed that out. Thirdly, I just want to say how great I think it is that we can have access to people like Alan and hear the way that they think and their frame of mind. I know that when I moved to Grantham Table Tennis Academy back in 2007, that was kind of the first time that I've been exposed to interacting with really high level players and coaches. And I just loved trying to have conversations with them and listen to the kind of things that they say and the way that they think, because I think if you're able to take that in, then you can start to get closer to their playing level and their ability, just based on absorbing their kind of traits, their habits, their way of thinking. And generally top players and top coaches are very positive. They really believe in their own ability to win matches and the feeling that if they put in the hard work, they're going to get results. And I mean, if you're listening to this podcast, that's kind of what you're doing. You're getting exposed to top players, top coaches, and regardless of whether you've only been playing for a few months or many years, hopefully that's going to filter through into your own game, and you're going to start to feel a bit more like a professional player. The final thing I want to mention is just a quote from Alan that I thought was brilliant. This is it. He said, "To be a good table tennis player, you've got to be smart. You need to be thinking your way out of problems and not just trying to bludgeon your way out." And I think that's something that just to mull over, the importance of being calm and relaxed so that you can be smart and you can think your way out of all the problems that you're going to face on the table, instead of just, blindly trying to bludgeon your way out of problems with big shots and shouting or whatever. Just being calm, being relaxed so that you can think your way out of problems. They do say that kind of table tennis is chess on speed. So definitely something to think about there. That's all for this episode of the podcast. I'm pleased to announce that in July's episode, I should be being joined by Jeff and Eloise from Ping Skills. So hopefully I'm able to chat to them, and next month they'll be on the show. As always, head over to experttabletennis.com in order to check out all of my blog posts, previous podcasts, and I've got a couple of pages looking at coaching and equipment where I link to basically all of my archives for the last few years. And as well, if you fancy dropping me an email, if you've got any questions or feedback on the podcast, or you'd like to suggest a guest, I'm well up for that. You can reach me at ben@experttabletennis.com. That's all for now. I'll be back in July. See you soon.